Past Matt, I've got some good news for you. You will be finding shards of fluorescent lamps for months and months and months and months! You didn't do very well on the mock-up in the end, but that's okay, because you learned a lesson. You just need more tabs to glue stuff together on. Now, Past Matt, you asked me if I've been able to stay focused. You asked me if I've been able to stay focused, and the answer is yes and no. I haven't been able to change my habits, so I changed my work style. When I got a newer, better monitor, I didn't get rid of my old one. I set my computer up for dual monitors so I could have work on one and play on the other. This effectively quenched my ADD. I also set up a second workbench up here so I could work while I have my distractions going. You may not think of it as logical, but if you have distractions constantly distracting you, you can kind of ignore them while you work on what you need to work on, as opposed to being somewhere else, where at least in my case, you'd have to run away to get distracted every once in a while. And then you get distracted for a really long time. Back in the present, I did the same thing as Past Matt, which is to say, not what I said I would. I said I'd put the roadbed in up to the Bulldog Tunnel, but I got as far as Far Creek before I decided this isn't working out because I couldn't figure out how to join it together properly. Maybe I'll be able to give an update on that next week, maybe not. I decided to put a bunch of risers in the Grand Forks area since I didn't really have any idea what I was going to do, and I decided I might as well do something. This week my life has intruded a lot, and for the most part it wasn't in a pleasant way. Let's get to the good stuff first. We met with one of our potential photographers this week, and I'm just in love with her. It's hard to imagine choosing anyone else. I have half a mind to just say, whatever, let's choose her. But we still have to meet with other people just in case, so I won't be looking back and saying, what if, what if, what if? I also decided to do something that is generally frowned upon. In desperate need of a portfolio for myself, I posted an ad on Kijiji for wedding photography at a relatively cheap price. This ended up with me using most of my Saturday to throw together a quick and dirty wedding photography sort of print book to showcase the work I have so far, and the rest of Saturday ended up at a party. This should have left me a lot of time to work on things, but things went rapidly downhill. The day after meeting with our photographer, something I've been sensing for some time has finally come to fruition. I was told by my foreman that I could either work unspecified night shifts or... meaning I'd probably get laid off. I've still got nearly 4 months to go before I go back to school, so life was like, hey, dumbass, don't do it. Do the thing. Of course, changing your sleep cycle isn't very conducive to working on things. Staying up extra late gives you a lot of time late at night where you're completely useless because you're too tired to do anything. Sleeping in as long as you can during the day obviously takes up a fair amount of the day. This month I'll be working 10-hour shifts through the darkest hours of the night, so don't expect any real visible progress. I do wonder what I'm going to do though. It might be interesting to see what I come up with in a month. Right now I'm thinking of building turnouts since I have nearly 100 to build in the short term and more than 50 after that. If not that, perhaps I'll spend some time in the darkroom, which I haven't done for over a year. What better time to be in the dark than nighttime? Well, I promised you a layout tour, and everything is really dirty and covered with building materials and everything, but I promised it to you, so I guess I have to deliver. Okay, here we are then. I am standing at the east end of the railway, which is technically the north end of the room. Right here is Eastern Staging, which represents Cranbrook, which in real life is a connector to the Windermere sub, which is a connector to the CP main line. This is where all of the Kootenay Division's traffic comes from, at least in the modern era. It is now nothing more than a heavy haul spur. Back in the day, it used to go all the way across to Hope, meeting up with the CP main line again, and it was the southern main line. But traffic sources dried up, and they realized it was easier to reroute everything from in the middle of the Kootenay Division east through Cranbrook and around the CP main line to Vancouver than it was to actually haul it over the entire Kootenay Division. So this staging yard leads into a helix over here, which goes up to the upper deck for a continuous run option. It's only an option though, it won't be featured in regular operations. The staging yard leads out in a big loop, coming out here to the town of Creston, which is the easternmost model point. Creston itself is mile 67.8 as measured from Cranbrook and features a couple of industries, a couple of grain elevators, and most importantly the Kootenay Brewery, where all of your delicious Kootenay beer comes from. From Creston, we come around the corner to Kootenay Landing. In 1898, when this line was built, it was deemed prohibitively expensive to build along the shore of Kootenay Lake, so Kootenay Landing was where the line terminated. There was a barge slip, and the barge went along the entire lake to Proctor, which we'll be seeing soon. Today, however, there is a large bridge across the Kootenay River at the south end of Kootenay Lake, and it does continue from there along the lake, which was built in 1931 in real life. From Kootenay Landing, the line travels for 35 miles along the shore of Kootenay Lake. Now this has been condensed into this wall. Proctor itself lies at mile 117, and this is Proctor. It's got a very small yard and, most importantly, a barge slip. Unfortunately, the barge doesn't really go anywhere because the real-life barge had almost been discontinued by this point. The real-life barge went to the Caslow and Slocan Railway, starting at Caslow, which was abandoned in the mid-1950s after some catastrophic washouts. It also went to the Lardo area, which was at the top of Kootenay Lake. This hadn't been in use since the 1930s. By the 1970s, the only traffic being carried on these barges was the occasional ore car or log car up to the mines on Kootenay Lake. Lying 140 miles west of Cranbrook is Nelson. Nelson is the major town of the central Kootenays and is a division point on the railway. This is the eastern half. The Kootenay Forestry Products Mill takes up a fair amount of this scene, as does what I like to call Christmas Town, where I wrapped all the presents. This is where most of the operational action on the Kootenay Division takes place. Nelson itself really is a big place, with a diesel shop here, roundhouse here, as opposed to building materials, 4 arrival departure tracks and a 5-track class yard, in addition to repair and place tracks and industry tracks here, caboose tracks, cleaning tracks, what have you. Needless to say, this is going to take a lot of work and won't be done for a while. Nelson itself is situated on the west arm of Kootenay Lake. The west arm ends, and the line follows the Kootenay River for nearly 26 miles to Castlegar. At mile 4.7 is the Tagan Bridge, which you saw in last week's Past Matt episode. Located at the confluence of the Kootenay and Columbia Rivers is the town of Castlegar. You might have also noticed that the Kootenay River is also my workbench for the week. I'll clean it up. Promise. Castlegar is a very important point on the railway. It is at Castlegar that the junction with the Rosslyn sub, which goes to the smelter at Trail, takes off. It is probably because of the smelter, the only one remaining in British Columbia, that this line still survives. The Rosslyn sub heads off into staging through the wall into the hallway, whereas the Boundary sub continues on, this way. Just to the west of Castlegar itself is the town of Robson. Robson was originally a barge slip which went along the upper Arrow Lake to points such as Nakusp and Arrowhead, which connected with the CP main line at Revelstoke. Today Robson West exists only as a siding. However, today the Kraft paper mill, owned by Selgar, supports much of the community of Castlegar. Additionally, 20 to 40 loads of lumber go in and out every day, which helps the Kootenay Valley Railway even more. It is the most heavily industrial area on my railway. With 12 industry tracks, it rates its own job, as seen in the last Past Matt, Train 87. Depending on mainline movements, this job can take up to 3 real-life hours to finish. West of the paper mill, the line does indeed follow the lower Arrow Lake. It runs to the Labarth Tunnel, which has since been flooded by the Hugh Keenley Side Dam in Castlegar, steadily gaining height for the next 30 miles to Farron Summit. It is in this section that McCormick Creek Bridge is the scenic highlight at 140 feet high and 410 feet long. To be continued. Shortly after going over the McCormick Creek Bridge, the line enters a 4-turn helix. Exiting the helix, it comes upon Shield Siding, which in real life is 10 miles west of Castlegar. The siding sits atop a large fill in a creek valley, formerly spanned by a trestle. Shields is one of the visible aspects of the most important industry on the layout, forestry. From Shield Siding, the line continues its ascent, going over Far Creek Bridge, around a 1-turn helix designed to replicate the mile-long Bulldog Tunnel, another fill in a creek, to the summit at Farron, which is a knot under at the entrance to the room. And here we are again. The summit at Farron is the first level spot on the layout that you encounter since Castlegar. 30 vertical inches, modeling 2,500 vertical feet earlier. Farron is 30 miles west of Castlegar and is situated right about here. You can see where I will be dropping it from the ceiling right here. West from Farron, the line begins to descend. The grade starts here, in this corner of the room, and the line heads around down McCrae Creek. There is a canyon here, and a tunnel is still seen from the highway bridge, which shoots over, way up here. The steps of the benchwork here betray the grade, as it descends a 2.4% grade all the way to the corner down there. This leads out of the McCrae Creek Valley and over the shores of Christina Lake. An incredibly beautiful area. Just look at this photo. This photo is taken at Fife, which on the layout is here. It features a limestone tipple and a very short passing siding, and if you operate this layout, don't plan to pass anyone here. It's not going to happen. From Fife, the line finally reaches its lowest point just a couple hundred feet north of the US border, at which point it makes an abrupt 90-degree turn to go over the Kettle River. This entire span of benchwork here is the Kettle River Bridge. It is going to be the longest bridge on the layout. West of the bridge, we descend slightly through the outskirts of the town of Grand Forks, which lies 95 miles west of Nelson. Right here is located the largest sawmill on the layout, as well as an interchange track with the Burlington Northern ex-Great Northern Line down to Republic in Washington. As it turns the corner, it crosses the Kettle River on a short bridge and enters the town of Grand Forks proper. A small yard may be the termination point of some trains, but others continue on. The line disappears through a swing gate into west staging. This joins up with a continuous run helix, thereby completing the loop. Well, there's not very much down there, and it's pretty dirty for what was there, so I hope I gave you some idea of the railway. It's 8 scale miles, visibly at least, representing 195 miles of prototype. I really look forward to being able to operate it more and give you more of an insight, but I don't think that's happening this year. We'll see. Anyway, that's it for this week. I'll see you next. Bye-bye.